Happy Friday morning. It's Jerry Miller. Welcome to Real Talk. Thank you kindly for joining us on the I Love CVille Network. Great to connect with you guys on this platform. We have a positive, upbeat show for you as we head into the weekend. Of course, Real Talk is an insider's guide to real estate across Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia in totality. It's powered by the Yes Team Realtors. The Yes Team, your choice for real estate across Central Virginia. I'm very excited, and I think on that note, our director, Harris Tolber, we should go to the studio cam, and we should welcome our stars of the program. Ladies first.
Of course.
Yonna Smith, right
Good
here.
morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Keith Smith here, and
Good
Keith,
morning.
a special guest, and Paul Harris.
Yeah, so we're super excited about this. We were chatting before we went on live that we're both New Yorkers, right? Not have lost his accent. Paul has, and we'll probably get deep into that. But I'm just really excited about introducing our fans. Is that what we call the fans?
A rock star.
Oh, he's
Rock
a rock
star.
star.
Yeah.
He's a rock star,
That goes without saying. But I just excited about introducing and bringing some of the great stuff that he's doing in the community. We were fortunate enough to help him and his wife Taylor buy a couple of houses. So today's show is not going to be about real estate so much. It's just going to be about some awesome people.
I love it. We're going to get to Paul Harris here in a matter of moments. If you have comments, questions, perspective you would like to share with the panel, put it in the comment section of any of the Facebook pages you are watching. Paul, we like to start with the birth story or the origin story, the flip book of your life, sir.
Sure. Well, firstly, thanks for even having me here today. It's pretty awesome to spend a bit of time with you. I've been keeping up with the shows and have enjoyed and learned a lot from them. My birth story, gosh, I am the youngest of 4 children, born to Charles and Doris Harris in Belmore, New York. And yes, I lost my accent. My buddies back home call me a fraud, but when I go back, it comes back. So there's still a little bit of New York there, and it will always be. But born and raised on Long Island, and went through the public school system there, and then in 1997 graduated from high school and came here to the University of Virginia as an undergraduate. Stalked this young lady a few years. Her name is Taylor. She ended up saying yes when I asked her to marry me, and we've now been married for 14 years. So I'm a husband to her, father to 3 amazing children, and my passion really is to love people, to serve them, to see them discover and deploy their God-given talents. And I get the privilege of doing that through my education role at UVA, serving as an assistant professor in the Curry School of Education, and most recently as pastor of Victory Church here in Charlottesville.
Fantastic. Yonna, what is it that you find so fantastic about Paul Harris?
I would say the warm, friendly interaction, and we were fortunate enough to go ahead and get to know his lovely family, Taylor, and the kids quite nicely and quite well too, and the involvement in the community. I think that's one of the I would say key points, and trying to go ahead and bring your church to Charlottesville. And so we were fortunate enough to, I think, be part of the very original services that you held, and watch the growth and see how everything continues. So very, very fortunate, very blessed to know you and the family. So.
What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm just, we say this every time. We bring like awesome people across from me, and it's just a struggle for me to keep up.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can't get any awesomer than that. One of my thoughts and genesis for this show was we're coming up on August 11th and August 12th, and one of the reasons I have such a huge affection for Paul, other than we're fellow Long Island New Yorkers, apparently he likes the wrong baseball
He likes
team.
the Bronx Bombers. That's all right.
We'll
The ones who win.
That's true. That's probably why we're jealous of you, Paul. You get the rings, we don't.
really, Paul, you had to go there. I thought we were going to keep this.
We can, yeah.
Are we going to get New York?
The gloves are back on, Keith.
Damn. But, one of the things that excited me about bringing Paul here is what he's doing at Victory Church.
Yeah.
And you and I have had this conversation before, and I was thinking about this earlier this morning. One of the things I always try to do, if I'm walking down the mall I just try to say hi to people. Paul and I just did this walking in. There was a woman in a cane getting out of the thing, and both of us instinctively stopped and first of all said hello to her and said, "Hey, can we help you?" Because she had a cane and she was up there in years, and what we can do with that. And I think what Paul's bringing to what we do here, what he does for us, is a little bit of that. I just would love Paul to kind of talk a little bit about the genesis of that and how the decision to create the church, and I won't steal your tagline, but it involves the word reconcile, so I'll let you kind of jump in from there if you would
Yeah,
like.
I mean, it's kind of hard to untie the genesis of Victory Church from my own genesis, right? And I won't go through all of those years of my youth, but having grown up on Long Island, as a sidebar but relevant parenthetical, part of why I became a Yankees fan is because we spent so much time in the Bronx. That's actually where my parents pastored a church for 40 years, and so much of my time was spent there. And
You're a second-generation pastor.
Third
Generation. Wow, cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of owing of debts to those who have come before me. I'll say it that way.
Fantastic.
And I think I'm just trying to do what I can do in my generation to pass the baton on, as well as it's been passed to me. So yeah, as early as my youth, I was exposed to growing up in a Christian household, serving because I wanted to serve in the church and in the community, helping to just really empower or facilitate the empowerment in that particular space of the South Bronx. So when I came to UVA, that mindset came with me as an undergraduate. So there were a lot of efforts both through the church and in the community that I felt was a responsibility, if you will, alongside many others who were doing the same things with their gifts and talents that they had. And if I fast forward now to graduating from UVA, going to DC, and then coming back here in 2011 to work, a few years into teaching, the heart to serve and to teach Bible studies and to do all the things that we've been privileged to do then became, I think we're supposed to actually start a church.
That's amazing.
Which
that.
wasn't in like the original sort of grand plan of mine, but it was pretty clear then that we were to do so. And so I started writing in a journal, which I never kept, words like reconciliation and transformation when I thought, what is this church going to look like? When are we going to plant? With whom are we going to plant this church? And it took me maybe a year or two to actually say it publicly to anyone else because I wanted to make sure. But much of it had to do with that burden to see a community reconciled to God and to each other, which now has become the vision of Victory Church today.
Yonna, when you're watching Paul in action at Victory, talk to about the dynamic. What are we seeing right there? I mean, obviously, so charismatic.
He got a little nervous. I saw.
Curious, interested.
True to the message, I would say gently reminding us that we are here on earth to serve for a purpose, for a reason, and sometimes we may not know it, but lean into it and let it happen. Very, very, very deep community sense. That's truly what I feel, and maybe more on the healing side also, and kind of bringing not just one particular group together, but a lot of different folks together. You have students there, you have community folks who lived in the area for quite some time. It's just a very nice blend, a very nice.
Inclusive
Very
is the
nice,
word
very inclusive, thank you. That's the word I was
that
looking
comes
for.
to mind.
And I feel home. Truly, I feel home.
But it's his what I like what Paul's doing, regardless if it's in a church format or some other. It's inclusivity.
Yep.
I think I said that right.
Yeah.
But so for me personally, we've been looking for a place that has that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a Catholic, was raised a Catholic, very different, right? And then we tried some different dynamics in church. And one of the things is everybody kind of looked like us, right? And what I love about what you're doing at Victory is everybody's different, which is huge for me personally because I come from my family's multiracial. I have 2 African-American brother-in-laws. I have a couple of Latino sister-in-laws. We have a couple of Jewish folks in our family. So we are always been that way. And and we never understood. We never understood what happened on August 12th. We just couldn't comprehend that because of the way that we live and was raised with our family. It always was multiracial. So what I like what Paul's doing is he's bringing that message, I think, to a good fair number of folks. And I guess I kind of re-ask the question again. You know, your vision and goals for that, was that kind of the game plan, that you wanted to bring, you know, people of different ethnicities and cultures together?
Yeah, you know, that's just been life. You know, I think it's just always been, I reference my parents, my grandparents, that's what we experienced, right? Going into Bally's in Levittown, Long Island, and watching my dad engage a lot of folks that didn't look like us.
I was born in Brooklyn. This is getting weird. So
Yeah.
I grew up in Brooklyn, but I moved out as a young boy, or 12-year-old or something like that, out to Levittown. So
Yeah. So that's, I mean, so you
what
know
part
the
of
dynamic
what
there.
part of Levittown?
Oh, that's, oh gosh, wherever Bally. It was called Jacqueline Lane back in the day.
Oh, yeah,
and
I
then they
remember
changed
that.
it to Bally.
Sure.
So Dad played racquetball there. Mom worked out there. A lot of folks there didn't look like us, and yet it was a space that we occupied and engaged with others. And then we're in the Bronx, where certainly we racially look like everyone for the most part, people of color, and similarly there was just this kind of family and sense of home. And so pretty early on there was this idea of being able to navigate different terrain with grace in such a way that saw each of those groups as brothers and sisters. And so that never left. I think for me, within the faith community, it's become one of how cool would it be to see all of those pockets of our world together on Sundays? And personally, and it didn't start with me, this is something Dr. King has certainly spoken to in terms of the most segregated hour, has not been the case. So yes, that has been a pretty big part of that heart's desire. And not just mine, I'd be remiss if I didn't kind of speak to the team that's largely responsible for anything and everything that's happening, as well as Grace Covenant Church, which is the sending church, sort of the parent church, the folks who still mentor me to this day. Brett Fuller is the senior pastor there in Chantilly, Virginia, where we experienced for the first time a multi-ethnic church community. And it wasn't window dressing, right? It wasn't like you just come, hang out, and leave. Like, we were in small groups with folks. We hung out and got to know folks. So in many ways, I'm perpetuating or extending what we've experienced in these other spaces, and doing the best that we can with the gifts he's given us,
So
alongside a lot of good folks.
Do you think you're making a difference?
I hope so. I think my goal, and by extension our goal, is to just discharge, if you will, the duties of the ministry he's called us to, and to do that well, to manage it well, to steward it well, and hopefully when it's all said and done, the marker will be a little bit further down the field.
You have a phenomenal team.
Yeah?
Really. Oh, yeah.
You have a lot of that team watching right now. Nick Williams says, good stuff, Paul. I'm so proud of you, man.
Yeah.
You're getting props right now from Devin Bandenson, from Tara Joy Larrick, from Nick Williams, from Chauncey Smith, from V. Gordon, Greg Slater, Ray Cadell. Welcome to the program. Michael Guthrie, hello. Bellamy Brown, thank you for joining us. This portion of the program, thanks to Roy Wheeler Realty Company. In 1927, Charlottesville was introduced to a new way of doing real estate. That's Roy Wheeler Realty Company. Proud supporters of Real Talk here on the I Love CVille Network. Have some questions coming in on the feed. What's the faith of the church? So I'll throw that to you. Also, I'd love for you to tell I'm an entrepreneur, and I love birth stories. And I think when you're launching a church, a lot of ways almost like launching a business or a nonprofit, you got to find a space, you got to build a community, you got to fund the overhead.
Yeah.
I would love to hear the faith of the church, and also kind of the birth story of the brand, if you may.
Oh, absolutely. So it's a Christian community. We believe, and you can see on the website some of the core beliefs, but everything is definitely born out of a belief in the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so we, to that end, see the Bible as our source of knowledge and inspiration, and a roadmap, if you will, for how to love well and live life well. We aren't a part of a particular denomination per se, though we are a part of a larger network of churches called Every Nation, which can also be found online to see what that larger family is about. In short, the mission of that family of churches is to plant Christ-centered, spirit-empowered, socially responsible churches and campus ministries in every nation. Right now we're in over 80. We just had a world conference down in Orlando with about 6,000 folks with just about every nation represented, which was kind of neat. But locally, we get to, with autonomy, discover and sort of deploy what we believe God's given us to do within this context, which is also a neat part of that partnership. A startup it is.
Yeah.
Sure it is.
Where are we going to meet? How many seats do we need? What parking do we need? What money do we have to pay the rent?
How are we going to pay the electric bill?
All of that
Right.
comes into play. And it's a part, quite honestly, of the larger testimony that is Victory. That can't be, I think, attributed to one person even. That is with skin on. I'd like to attribute it to God and his faithfulness to us, even when we're not as faithful as we should be to him. But one of the desires was to meet in the city of Charlottesville. Lots of layers of reasoning for that, but we want it to be in the community, close to UVA, but not on top of UVA, such that both spaces would feel comfortable and welcome coming. And so we started at the Boys and Girls Club in Charlottesville on
That's
Cherry
awesome.
Avenue.
That is awesome.
And we
Yep.
turned their cafe into a sanctuary, and it was amazing. So that's where we started. And a month in, we realized we'd have to do 2 services there. The parking wasn't the greatest, which is a good problem to have. And we then transitioned over to Walker Upper Elementary School, where we've been since February 3rd.
Yeah, beginning of
Meeting
February, I
there
remember.
every week at 10:30. And it's been awesome, and we're being just generously loved by a lot of people to continue doing what we're doing in terms of funding for the very practical needs that we have. And beyond just the needs on Sundays, we're able to do a lot of what we envisioned doing. For example, Greenstone on 5th, which is a community that we have an MOU with. We have keys to their community center, and we'll meet with the young folks there.
So I have to stop.
Am
for
I
a
jumping
second.
ahead a little bit too much?
No,
All right.
no. We try to explain acronyms here because I tend to throw a lot of them out. MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. So
Yes, yeah. So we have an agreement with the community center there that's allowed us to go in, and on August 16th, they're doing a back-to-school event for the kids in that community. And so
Nice.
some of the generous loving on that we've received from people and companies and organizations are directly impacting our community in some real tangible ways. But we can get more into that if you'd like. But that's a little bit about, on the front end, the faith of the community, and then on the back end, hopefully addressing a bit of and you know, there's always so much more to that, Jerry. But that's a little bit of
It was a great snapshot.
the startup nature of the church, and it's been awesome.
Tara Joy Lyric says, startups are tough. I'm so proud of what you're doing, Paul. Dana Boyle, total rock star Paul Harris. Give it a like and share on any of the streams that you're watching. Kara Leva, welcome to the program. Christopher Johnson's watching. Carl Warren Sipp, your page blowing up right now. You know what I love? I love love stories. We heard your love story on this program with Keith. I would love to hear how Paul Harris romanced Taylor at the University of Virginia. Your wife is a tremendous writer.
She is.
Is
She
it
is.
TaylorAHarris.com?
Yes.
Is the URL.
I hope I got that right.
And, you know, I'll confirm that. That way we're making sure we get the URL.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the love story? TaylorAHarris.com is right.
Is right,
Okay.
all right.
Tell us the love story.
I mean, we could call it a stalking story. I'm thinking she might say that if she were here, which wouldn't be entirely untrue.
So you were persistent.
I was a little persistent.
That's good.
And there was no one on the trolley that day, and I thought, well, heck, I like to talk to people, and she was a bit freaked out by that. But I started talking to her, and if black people could blush, I'm sure she would have in that moment, and because she says, who is this guy talking to me? But no, we met on the trolley, 2001. No one was there, and I start talking to her because I know that she's a mutual friend of some other fraternity brothers of mine at the university.
Which fraternity? I was a Phi Psi.
Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity
okay.
Incorporated.
Fantastic,
Yeah,
fantastic.
And so she was connected with some of my younger brothers, and I knew her, and that's where it began. She
Beautiful.
wasn't completely freaked out because when we met later at something called Harambe, it's a celebration of undergraduate African American student academic success. I was visiting, I'm sure she was being celebrated, and we were by the Kool-Aid or whatever they had, and I said, hey, remember me? How are you? And so forth and so on. Yes,
Oh,
that's my
beautiful.
You're
bride.
on screen right
She's
now.
Oh,
amazing.
beautiful.
Doing a little work for us here, Yonna.
Yeah, beautiful.
She is Gosh, what am I, 5'9"? She's about 5'2", but anybody who knows her knows I married up. She's an incredible woman.
Good line.
Amazing,
it's true.
amazing lady.
So that's a part of the love story. We met again at Harambe, still just wanting to connect a little bit more, but had an interesting engagement around that moment, such that we were forecasting our future. So we moved really quickly into what we thought might be something, but all somewhat in jest. Anybody knows Taylor knows she's a comedian. But we then started to just hang out with each other. I was focused more on getting a job and leaving town. She was focused more on God. She even had a T-shirt that said, "Jesus is my boo," which pretty much told me and anybody else that you're just a friend right now. But I'll say, in those moments, we cultivated a different kind of intimacy that I don't think I had ever experienced.
That comes with friendship.
That
first.
comes with friendship.
Right.
And it just came
Totally
with
can relate.
intellectual
Beautiful.
and emotional and spiritual intimacy. I left UVA, started working in Newport News at Warwick High School as a counselor. And
757 right here.
757. How about that?
Okay.
All
Gee.
kinds of connections around the table.
Connection, we
You
do.
two have connections
Yeah.
going on.
So I'm bye. See you later.
So, yeah, I mean,
Keith.
so I was in the Tidewater for a bit and
Oh,
couldn't get
wow.
her out of my head. And so, in heart. And so I was traveling up here every weekend until she graduated, seeing her. And obviously at that point, we took it a step further to dating.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
2005, we tied the knot. August 6th will be 14 years.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. What do you think?
Beautiful. Oh my God. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it?
I like it.
Now, she is a woman of incredible words, so she probably articulate that a lot better than I
Oh, you
did.
did a
No,
really
you
good
did. You did a
job.
wonderful job. You did a wonderful job.
But that's-
AJ Mosley, Paul's an amazing man. So proud of all the work he's doing in Charlottesville. Grateful to be associated with Victory Church. Harrisonburg is cheering you on. Go, bro. Paul Orr, awesome work, Paul. Warren Smith, excellent, Pastor Paul. Keep going. Keep up God's work. Keith Smith, jump in here, baby.
So I'm watching,
No.
and those who watch the show, for me to stay this quiet this long
It's a little difficult.
feat.
It's a little
You've
difficult.
lost your accent, but you totally kept
Oh,
this
yeah.
from.
Is it all still there?
Oh,
it's
yeah.
still
All
there,
right.
man.
I love
The
it.
mannerisms and the body language. I was just watching. I was going, yeah, I know that. But so I kind of want to focus back to what we've got coming up on August 11th and August 12th, and you know, the way I personally engage in this stuff is to be present, right? So, I was thinking of a story yesterday when it was raining really, really bad. A couple of African-American city workers were taking out the trash, and I was rushing around, and I stopped what I was doing, and I walked over and I said, "Hey, man, thank you for doing that." You know, I just took a minute out of my day, or 30 seconds out of my day, to say thank you. You know, I can't quote scripture or anything like that. That's not my thing. But I try to engage, just like the conversation you had with your beautiful bride now on the trolley. You know, I try to bring that skill sets to that. So, are you seeing it getting any better? Are we getting better as a community to talking to one another, or
Good question.
or are we still talking past each other? Or I know it's a real loaded question, but
Yeah.
I ask it specifically because what you've built at the church, you bring all these different mindsets and these different colors, for lack of a better word, together. Are you seeing it being successful?
It's a great question. Are we where we were 50 years ago? I would say no.
No.
Are we remotely close to where we'd like to be? I would say emphatically again, absolutely not, no. And to that end, I think at least my charge, my sense of responsibility, alongside you and anybody else in the city of Charlottesville, which are many people engaging around these spaces, is to just do what we can with the relentless pursuit of excellence. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great talks about level 5 leaders having humility in this relentless
Love
pursuit
that book.
of excellence. And I think that is where my focus is, along with our team, and how can we, in our generation, as I referenced earlier, pass the baton on to the next generation in a much better place. And critical to us at Victory Church, and certainly all aspects and spaces in Charlottesville are pursuing a goal in the way that they deem appropriate. For us, it requires our reliance on something beyond us. Right, so this idea of reconciliation to God and to each other, we start with that vertical for our community because it's only out of that reconciliation with him that we could ever have the kind of power necessary to break down the barriers set up in these horizontal relationships. So in response to your question, are we where we used to be? No, but we've got a lot more to do, and I think we're just trying to make a dent in that as best we
But
can.
do you think we're getting just a little bit better? Is there a little bit of progress? Is there a little bit of, loving your brother out there and being conscious of that? I know I'm seeing it. Maybe I'm because I want to see it, right?
Yeah.
And I encourage that kind of thing. Is James Watson watching today?
James Watson is not right now.
Yeah. So after August 11, James is my brother-in-law. He's African American. I literally grabbed his hand, and I said, "We're walking down the mall together, holding each other's hand." And that's what we did. We walked down the mall, held each other's hand, turned around, walked back up, holding each other's hand. Just as we weren't, going to scream and yell at anybody. We weren't going to do anything. We were just going to say, "This is what this looks like. This is how this looks."
I think you also
We got a
need to-
couple
need
of
to be
propositions in the
intentional about
process,
it.
but
Yeah.
I think you need to be
intentionality is
intentional about it.
important.
I think the events around that August 11th and 12th, at least I hope, for a good majority of folks meant, okay, you need to pause, notice, take a breath, be intentional about reaching across lines, whatever they are, and try to be inclusive and trying to be healing. And I think that's I think I said this in one of the shows before, that's why I feel I'm on this earth. I'm on this earth to go ahead and lend a smile, lend a hand, be inclusive, be intentional, and try to be a good human being.
Yeah.
Golden rule, baby.
That's it.
I think what's exciting about that is that each of us has something to give.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right? I think there's a God-given gift and talent that we could all discharge well. I love to look for God everywhere.
Hate's not one of them,
No.
right?
What's that? No.
Hate's not just
No.
love, man.
No, we want to love well, and again, out of the space that Victory Church occupies in seeing God as love, I think, well, what does He do, and how does love from Him manifest? And Scripture would shed light on that He gave His Son for us. So then, for me, and I'm thinking about loving, what does it look like for me to give? What does it look
Sure.
like for me to lay my life down for those around me? To your question of is there progress? There are so many folks here, not just doing good things. I think deeds are important, but I think out of what they come is particularly important, which is why for us reconciliation to God is so key. And I love to see God recognizable.
Sure.
And so part of sort of one of the things that we say a lot of Victory is how do we do that? How do we make Him recognizable, whether you're in a pulpit or you're hosting a show or you're teaching a class or you are working in business? What does it look like to display some countercultural things such that people say there's something else going on there that is counter what we experienced on August 11th and 12th or prior to. And to that end, yeah, I do see more and more people making God recognizable in ways that I think will facilitate the kind of healing that won't come from my perspective, a strategy that I devise alone.
Right.
So I think there is progress, and yet the humility says
What
I
to do.
recognize who I am and who I'm not, and there's an honest assessment of what I'm capable of on my own, and to that end, God help me to do even more because we got a long way to go. But it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of that. I will say that.
So as you were speaking, I was just thinking who's sitting at this table, right? African American, a European, Austrian, Cuban descent, Italian, Irish, and we're sitting here loving each other, having a great conversation, talking about moving the ball forward. It's not that difficult. It's this simple, in my mind. I don't have the skill sets to quote chapters and verses. I know the Bible to turn to a page when you tell me at service to turn to this page, but it's just being present, having this conversation, being respectful of each one's cultures and opinions and orientations and stuff like that. I put a uniform on for 6 years to defend that.
Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
Simple
Actually, I didn't wear a
Marine.
uniform, but that's a different story. That's-
He still has that uniform, just saying.
This portion of the program, thanks to Hairsmith and Company. You want hair like Keith?
Thank you.
Hairsmith and Company on Market Street.
Yes.
Not like Paul's, though.
I mean, hey.
Let me throw this to you. Paul, I'm always curious about like the firsthand anecdotal perspective because it's authentic, it's genuine, it's real to your life.
Yeah.
Your firsthand perspective of A11, A12, Southern Baptist, raised Southern Baptist, raised in a Catholic school, grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, studied Buddhism at the University of Virginia, melting pot of religions, which bred an open-minded mindset, was out here at A11, A12, literally in front of this door for two reasons, concerned about the building, also concerned about the legacy of Charlottesville, also wanted to relay to my son when he got to history class and read it in the books. This is what Dad saw firsthand. My wife was super irritated with me for being in harm's way and being here to the point where I told her I went to ACAC and instead was right here. Sorry, Mrs. Miller, a little white lie right there.
That's not little, by the way. That's not a lie.
Saul, she's watching right now, so we're careful what we're saying. Okay, a gentleman get kicked in the head multiple times by a group of Nazis and stuff coming out of his ear and his eyes that lingered for 60, 70 days. My wife helped me get out of that funk, and the manifestation of that was this show. That's the first hand for us. Throw it to you for you. Where were you, A11, A12? This is a dynamic question because you're an associate professor at UVA. So
Assistant.
A11, assistant.
Assistant, but hey, I hope that associate comes soon.
that's
Just
what
submitted
I'm
my
saying.
tenure material, so
So
if
it's
y'all are
stuff-
praying out there, you can pray. Add that to your prayer.
There
list.
you go. There you go.
go.
Stuff on grounds.
Yes.
Okay. You're a leader in the community. You love Charlottesville.
Yeah.
A lot of layers to this onion for you.
Yes, so many. And stories like that I want to listen to more and more. Not even just of August 11th, 12th, though that is obviously incredibly important, but just of experiences in this city and how those experiences have shaped your view of the city and what hope, if left, is there about the city and how we can engage that. So thank you for sharing, and I hope you're not in too big a doghouse for the white
We'll see
white
when I
lie
get
that
home. We'll see when I get home.
We've got 2 extra bedrooms. So.
Thank you.
There you go. Our story is interesting in that a part of our accepting this call to start a church meant that we made a phone call to our pastor when we did live in Northern Virginia, Brett Fuller, and saying something to the effect of, we know we're supposed to start this church, we have no idea what we're doing. That was key because he then did more than just help us. He opened up himself and the church to support us in this way. And this is getting to your question, Jerry. He says, I would love for you to serve as our small groups leader here at this church so that you could really learn what it would look like for you to run a ministry. My bright idea was to have our family go back and forth every week, which we were doing for some time already. We were already driving up there, and I said, well, we'll just keep doing that, and it'll be great. And then we realized that's not going to work well for a lot of reasons. So we decided to move our family there, and I would do the back and forth. So where was I on August 11th and 12th? I was here during the day, and then I drove home, which at that point was Northern Virginia. And I was sitting at dinner, particularly on August 12th, with 2 other UVA alum, while we had this sense of guilt that we're still trying to figure out how to navigate, guilt about not being here at a home, guilt about maybe we should have stayed instead of moved here, guilt about, well, what would we do even if we were there? That's where we were, and that was our story, seeing it through the lens of tweets and text and phone calls and other
National
National TV, and other alum who at the time literally were sitting with us saying, this is our university, this is our city, what are we going to do about it? And that was that Saturday, that Sunday morning, way before the planned sort of public comment from Grace Covenant Church's pulpit. I was in the pulpit saying what all along we had been talking about with regard to Victory Church, which had to do with being reconciled to God and each other. And for us, that was a way, while not being present in the city, to then continue having the voice in the city about what God was calling us to and was calling us to before August 11th and 12th. And so in many ways, that was a reinforcement confirmation, if I can use that word, of what God had placed in our hearts to embark upon further, I'll say, here in this city.
It's great.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And
I'm
it's
speechless. This is such a telling
It's humbling.
moment. It's humbling, yes.
I felt similar feelings of guilt and because I, left prior to what I undoubtedly is a terrorist attack with taking the life of Heather Heyer. I felt a sense of wanting to be on site, but then also a sense of loyalty to my family, and that I needed to protect myself because my family relies on me. I felt a need as a leader, and I think when God bless you with gifts, if you don't share those gifts that He's blessed you with, then you've done in some ways a disservice to those blessings. And I feel like one of the gifts, like you, is being able to, in a confident, charismatic, and approachable fashion, pass along something from that's on my mind. And I felt the need to be on the front lines. So I felt torn. There was these emotions that were brutal to navigate. How did you navigate those, and how difficult was that service immediately after 8/12? I mean, I would think that was one of the most challenging ones you've ever done.
Yeah. So still navigating, as I imagine you and many of us are to this day. And yeah, that was the pollen was thick in the air that morning. I'll say that for me, because it was, again, standing before my family, my church family there, knowing their empathy and deep sense of care for the city of Charlottesville, as evidenced by their prayers and tangible support and visitation and so much more. And yet, I was standing on the stage knowing that I lived there. I took my daughter to the pie chest just a day or two before, right? And so there were all of those emotions, and I don't know even quite how to articulate it to this day, except to say that in that space, there was love experienced by my church family, by God, such that I wasn't grieving without hope. And then there's something in Scripture that talks about that we don't have to be a people who grieve without hope, which isn't just loss of life, though it is that, certainly, but grieving even some loss of identity or loss of, I don't want to say innocence, because Charlottesville's never necessarily been innocent, but loss of what we knew Charlottesville to be on some level those 2 days. But I didn't have to grieve that without hope because of who I believe was still with us in the midst of and would carry us through and beyond that space. My wife helped me navigate. She is an amazing writer and wrote a piece shortly after in The Catapult, which is an online literary space, about talking to our daughter about those events. She at the time was 6 years old. So how in the world do you talk to a 6-year-old about that? And she wrote about it, which for me
How do
was
you
therapy.
talk to a 6-year-old about that?
I don't know. And we still don't know, but we tried. And we just made very clear to her that there are dynamics in our society that have historically marginalized and oppressed certain groups. And while we have made some strides, there are some realities that persist today that she and her brother and sister would need to be aware of. And in as kid-friendly a language as we could, we tried to explain some of those dynamics and how those prejudices and biases might even play out in physical harm and maybe even loss of life, as they did on August 11th and 12th. What was interesting, and I won't go down this path too far, was that it wasn't foreign to her.
She had already
It wasn't
experienced
completely foreign to her. There was some identification of difference.
Interesting.
Right?
That's interesting.
At that age. And I think in some ways presenting a conversation, again, developmentally appropriate, so we tried, allowed for her to even express in her language what she had already conceptualized in the ways that she could. So tough still, because we're like, are we bringing this stuff to her too soon? Like, what are we doing? I don't know, but we got to talk about this, why 4th Street is now blocked off.
Right.
We've got to talk
It's
about
the point of being parents, protecting
what-
your kids.
And I don't know how to do that, Jerry, and I don't know that we did it well.
Neither do
I
I.
just know that we
Yonna,
tried.
let's ask
That's
Yonna.
a learning experience.
Yeah.
We don't know either. That's a learning experience. You go by by your instinct, by your gut, and also what you have learned from your parents. I mean,
Yeah.
that's sort of how I mean, both our girls were absolutely floored. And try to go ahead and make any sense out of it is just still to this day, you just cannot grab it. So that's why I'm saying, trying to move forward in the sense that, okay, this is new. This is now the new Charlottesville. This is, what can we do? What can I do to go ahead and bring that healing, reconciliation forward, even if it's just a small little
That is
piece,
why I walk
small little
down.
piece. I think if this is a ripple effect, if we are positive, if we are trying to go ahead and do the best as a human being that we are sent here on earth, which I said before, I believe I'm here for. Gosh darn it, the ripple effect hopefully will take time. I mean, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. Like you said, there's more work to be done. But I believe that's one of the reasons why we need to be fulfilling our purpose in life, being a good human being and being a good community leader, involvement on whatever level. So
Said Yonna.
that's what I'm passionate about.
And you two were two of the people that we said to our daughter, when she asked,
Yes.
do all white people hate us? Right? We had to have some tangible people
Oh,
that we
sure.
could say, no, there are many in our community who love us and we love them. And yet there still exists a dynamic
Oh, sure.
where that is our reality, unfortunately. So I'm thankful that, not just for you two, but Jerry and others who discharge those duties of what you believe is your ministry and your purpose, because I think we're
Yeah.
better for it.
And that's why I'm saying your church is home in a sense. It's home. We have a sort of a base of warmth that we know that the message that you are giving to us on a Sunday, I think we can, maybe not in the same format, but in a smaller way, we can make a difference. So
I'm just trying not to tear up.
that
Literally, I'm
was my
trying not
passion.
to tear up
my
here.
passion for the day.
Because it's difficult. This conversation is awesome, but for me, my brain is really hard to get away from 9/11.
Yes.
And there's some of the conversations that you were having and the feelings you're having. I lost 40 friends that day. Because my grandfather and my father and my great-grandfather are New York City firemen. So the kids I grew up with, your dad was either a cop or a fireman, and talk about guilt, right? If I was on the fire department, or if I was on the police department, because that was the track I was on, and then life changed and I was on a different track, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you, right? Because I'd be dead. To me, and this is a heavy subject, and I'm thankful that we're allowed to have this conversation, and I'm thankful that we have the ability to bring this conversation to folks. But to me, it was grabbing James's hand and walking down the street, and in my New Yorker Marine mentality, telling everybody to go F themselves as we were walking down the thing. You know what? F you, pal. This is what this looks like. And that was it. And I don't have I can't articulate like you can, but I can grab somebody, I can hug them, and I can say, this is what this looks like. Your daughter, this is what this looks like.
Yeah.
That's not what it looks like. That's not real. This is real.
Yeah.
So that's how I would do that. So I'm trying to hold back some tears because this is pretty heavy stuff, but
And there's a lot of positiveness also going on in Charlottesville, again, that we shouldn't forget about. I mean, and that helped, obviously, the healing process. I mean, I swear to God, I've never seen somebody celebrating for 3 days when we won the NCAA
Championship.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
This guy's a basketball guy.
So
It's in his bio on his website. I'm
do.
looking at it right now.
So what do you think?
Well,
This is some heavy conversation.
Well-
this is a rock star. I told
Yeah,
you we only bring first-class folks.
What I'd like to do is share some perspective from the viewers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of perspective being shared. This portion of the program, thanks to Mike Bittrick and First Heritage Mortgage.
Thank
if you
you,
need
Mike.
a loan for your home, First Heritage Mortgage is a solution. Tamika Ferguson, on your page, this is such an amazing conversation. With consideration of reconciliation and healing in this new city of Charlottesville, what does this look like for the city from a faith perspective? So she has that question that she'd like us to address. Kelsey Richardson, great professor, and I will pray for tenure, Paul. We were in
Thanks,
class
Kelsey.
on A11 and A12, but Dr. Harris and all the professors in the counselor ed program at UVA gave us space to process. Thank you. I remember my second year at UVA, I was at Lambeth Commons when September 11th was going on. And I remember kind of having the maturity to process of what was happening. Still very young as like a 19, 20-year-old, but still like realizing this is serious. Walking to grounds and to the lawn for Dr. Cortez Cinemas and Art Form class, and as walking from Lambeth over to grounds, it's like, this is something that is going to be generational and historical and impactful for the country for lifetimes to come. And I think August 11th and 12th, the same. Our kids, mine's the youngest, 16 months, will be reading about this when they get to class. And I'm just curious to see how this brings us to a better space, both physically and mentally and spiritually.
Yeah.
Because as a glass is half full type of guy, and I think all of us embody that mindset, I'm looking for that, as you said, hope. Some hope here.
Yeah.
Throw that to you, Paul.
Similarly, hope. I look for hope, which for me looks like looking for God in every scenario. Tamika Ferguson. I don't know if I'm out of order with questions here, but that question struck me. First of all, Tamika Ferguson is doing incredible work down at Virginia Commonwealth University through academia and her work on black female student athletes. And I think other academics, which is why I love working in that space, are doing incredible work that can inform the efforts that we're putting forward in incredible ways. Joanna Williams, Nancy Deutsch, Darren Kelly at UT Austin, Joanna and Nancy are right here at UVA, Chauncey Smith, Joseph Williams. So many are doing things in this community and beyond that I think are helpful to the conversation and helpful to our generation of hope as we move forward. How do we incorporate faith, I think was Tamika's question,
Yes.
or how do we see this through the lens of faith?
What does this look like for the city from a faith perspective?
Yeah,
Great question.
It is.
It's a great question and one that we are unpacking the answer to every single day.
I think it challenges our faith.
I think it
Absolutely.
challenges us. I think it going back to that definition of humility, which in many respects is just an honest assessment of who we are and what we're not and whose we are and the capacity we have in God, not ourselves, and seeing Scripture and pointing through to Scripture that illuminates in many ways some of the issues that we are talking about today. And again, that's in the community that Victory Church espouses and occupies. For example, not to make this a sermon, and I won't, but when I think of Jesus' visitation to the woman at the well, there were so many reasons for which they should not have been talking to each other. Barriers society had put up in terms of her being a woman, in terms of them being of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, and yet we see him sitting with her. We see him talking with her through what society would have deemed to be sins that she should not be forgiven for, having slept with however many men and had however many husbands, and yet Jesus, the one without sin, is sitting with her. So when I think about faith in this context, it's illuminating Scripture in ways perhaps we've not done or have not known how to do or maybe haven't had courage to do, to say there's something to be said through this roadmap, as we call it at Victory Church, about what we're going through now. And as such, how can we have the courage with humility and with grace and tact speak to those inequities, the marginalization or oppression of a few to the privilege of some, in a way that doesn't further distance those groups, but in a way with truth and love, which I think is embodied no better than Jesus, speak all of those things and with prayer see people come together. Now that's easy to say. That's so much harder to actually do.
Execute.
But when we talk about Victory Church, seeing people reconcile to God and to each other, much of it is trying our best to do that. And we'll spend a lifetime doing it, and our kids will, I'm sure, as we say to generations prior, we need to carry the baton further. We won't do things exactly like they did, but they taught us something, and that's our hope, to pass on the baton in that way.
So not to oversimplify that, you just got to do, right? Just do. Just be that better person and reach out. It will cost you 15 seconds, cost you 30 seconds. You know, we as a society do this, and believe me, I'm addicted to this. I'll walk around and do this. You know, I was thinking earlier this morning, you know, it's just who I am. I like to engage people. Just, you know, we're the same people, right? So I'm really super bummed at the Water Street Parking Center that you can't talk to the people.
Saying it's automated now.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hate it.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and I get the need for the speed, right, and efficiency on business, and I get all that.
Yeah.
But I miss these little 15-second. I park there far too often, as my wife will
You're
say.
talking human connection. You missed the human
I just
connection.
wanted to say, which is the basis
Yeah,
for a lot
you
of
know,
different things. Yeah.
That's what we love about life, all of us.
Yeah, so hey, you know, I always took the, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
How's going on? I made sure I understood the person's name. How's life
Yeah.
treating you? You know, blah blah blah. I make some sort of silly joke that she would laugh at me, but was probably stupid anyway. But
That's probably one of my top 5 favorite things of life,
yeah,
is human connection.
or stupid jokes.
No, I just like.
I wanted to make sure I
connecting with-
understood that.
Connecting with people.
Yeah, so you know, I do that. I did it last night. I came home from a planning district commission meeting, 9:30 at night. Nobody's in the parking garage. Nobody's behind me, and they blackened. If you've been through it, they cardboarded it off. You can't see the person in there. And I stopped, and the door opened, and it happened to be one of the women that I have conversations with all the time. I said, "How you doing? You know, thanks for being here, and you know, how's the family? Doing good. Okay. Have a nice evening. Thank you. Have a nice evening." You know.
It's going back to the pause and notice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting speech, UVA graduation, the CEO of the nursing school. She was giving the commencement address, and one of her first thing is we as humans will always crave for human interaction, no matter what all this is. And sometimes it's just the hardest thing to really realize, live in the moment, pause and notice, and interact. It's an amazing link that nobody really intentionally thinks about anymore, because we're just so connected with the phones and everything that we kind of lose that ability.
So the follow-up to that story, couple of weeks ago, I left my wallet at Petite Marie Bet, which is my second home. For those,
Yeah, I told Jason we need to buy stock in this company.
I think we
You're
own.
looking at me right across the
I was like, my
Statements.
God, yes.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
Well, I guess I'm not taking the air after this. But
Love you, Yonna.
so I left my wallet there and the card. Right, this was before they went to this thing and they were the stamping part of it. And you know the rule is if you don't have your card, you pay for a full day.
That's correct.
So of all the years that I've been parking there and having these conversations, I pulled up and I went, man, I left my wallet in Marie Bet. I don't have the thing. You know, can you let me out? And I promise you I'll get it and I'll come back. And you know, I don't want to get the woman in trouble, but she says, get out of here. You know, great conversation. Have a great day.
Talk
Get out of
soon.
here. Go get your wallet, go home.
Yep.
You know, you're not going to get that from a little machine that you stick. If I didn't have my card, I wouldn't get out. So I just think that, you know, that's why, to kind of bring it a little bit back to real estate, because I guess it's a real estate show, I guess. We're supposed to talk about that at some point. You know, that's why I love what we do. That's the reason I love getting up and doing what we do to help people buy and sell houses, just like we helped you and your Taylor buy a couple of houses. You know, it's not about the transaction. It's about the relationship.
Bringing you home.
And bringing you home.
Bringing you home.
You know,
2 times.
and you know, that's why I get up. I get excited to go out and do my day It's not a chore. It's the reason why I have this volaholic problem I have and volunteer a little too much, which you're trying to get me to volunteer more. By the way, Yonna, Paul wants me to help him do some stuff.
He's got some gifts.
I'm
He's got some gifts.
Oh,
that he
yeah,
can,
yeah, I know. I know he has gifts.
Totally on your time and schedule.
Yeah. So any real estate agents that might be watching, we're looking for some land for a church in the city.
Christopher Eagle, welcome to the show, guys. This portion of the program, thanks to our final sponsor, Charlottesville Settlement Company.
Thank you.
Bill Tucker and Charlottesville Settlement Company have been doing it for decades. Paige Lindblom, I'm sorry if I'm messing your last name up, a great person and a great dad. Love you and Taylor Harris. Robin U. Fields, yes, teach us. Paul Harris, so proud of you. Love you. Continue to stand tall and strong. This has been a great show. This has been a great show. You're dynamic. Paul, how about close on this? We are 9 days away, 10 days away from August 12th, 9 days from August 11th. 2-year anniversary. Show is yours on that topic, on mindset, on how we approach it, how we go about this, I think, historic anniversary in the best way that we can possibly as people.
Wow.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a
You know,
big question.
we're doing a sermon series beginning Sunday, actually, entitled Teammates Matter. And by no stretch of the imagination are these comments in totality of what I would say, but just to be brief and pointed and closing the show, we're starting the month of August already with a Teammates Matter series. In the academic space, clearly I'm not bringing up scripture chapter and verse, right? I'm there to teach counseling, and we walk through what that looks like. And a part of that, though, process is talking about the Johari window, which if you Google it, you'll see it's a grid of 4 different boxes. I won't go through all of them, but one of them speaks to the blind spot. And the conversation I have with my students every year is, we all have one, and they're huge. And one of the ways that we can go about minimizing that blind spot is to do what you said. And what you said is to engage, is to interact, is to spend time with people who aren't just your amen corner.
True.
Right.
Spend some time with folks who might be able to teach you something that you have no knowledge of. I have no idea, Jerry, what it means to be of Cuban descent. No idea what it means to have studied what you studied, and so forth and so on, right? Even growing up in New York, I don't know what it was like for you growing up in New York, and what, Yonna, it's been like for you to be a mom. And if I'm not careful, I might marginalize women in my classroom if I'm not sensitive to that blind spot as being a man. So, having said that, teammates matter. And I think for me, in approaching this space and everyday space, if I'm honest, is recognizing, one, there's no stones being thrown from this glass house, or as the Bible says, which is my roadmap. I need to get the speck out of my eye before I dare look at anybody else's to get, or not the speck, the telephone pole out of my eye before I dare try to get a speck out of somebody else's. And so as I approached August 11th and 12th, or any day, I'm thinking, for me, Lord, how can I be better? What does it look like for me to love like you've loved? What does it look like for me to minimize those blind spots in my life? Who have I walked past? Who have I talked past? Who have I oppressed or marginalized in ways unintentionally in my classroom, in the church, on the street corner? Help me to do that better. And in so doing, gosh, my prayer is that you would be recognizable to people in such a way that they would maybe want to engage me on some other fronts that might strengthen relationships and build the community that we all call Charlottesville and home. And that's my approach. And if that helps anybody or rubs off and is useful, then
Very well put.
embody that as well.
I love it.
Take the fear factor out of it. Try to minimize the fear and encourage, I would say, healing, forgiveness, and just be engaged, I think. The fear factor is a big thing, so, because we're all afraid of certain things, but trying to breathe through it and work through it, I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge.
So we're going to be out west for the next 2 Sundays, so this was kind of my sermon. Thank you.
Well, we're going to be
I
able to
got it
listen to you,
covered.
though.
I mean, look, all kidding aside, we went into the show knowing today was not going to be about real estate. I purposely wanted the show about healing and about what we can do as a community to move better. This is why I haunted you, frankly, to come on the show. We'll get back to it next week with real estate. We've got Sarah and her husband coming in. You can say the last name.
Sarah and Mike Buczynski.
There you go,
Buczynski.
Buczynski.
Yeah. Mike Buczynski from one of our sponsors, First Heritage Mortgage.
Thank you.
And Sarah from Roy Wheeler Realty Company.
Thank you.
Yep.
I don't. It must be last name being Smith. Anything more complicated than that, it's a little difficult for me. But we'll get back to real estate about that while Yonna and I are out west in San Diego and up in Seattle visiting our daughter. But to me, this was important for those who was watching, looking to hear about real estate. I hope today you walked away from this show watching it live or as it's being recirculated throughout to. Go out and grab somebody's hand that's different than yours and take a walk down downtown mall. Say, hey man, let's take a walk. Mm-hmm. So I hope that this show's done that. And Paul, brother,
you.
Thanks man. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Means
Did
a
you,
lot.
did you have a good time?
I had a great time. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Good.
Yeah,
You
thank
crushed
you.
it. You hit a home run. How can we find out more about Victory Church?
Sure.
How can we find out more about what you do and connect with your brand?
Well, victorycville.org is the website. Everything will be there, from sermon titles to what's happening next in our events thread there, as well as all of our media, SoundCloud, there's a podcast, Facebook, Instagram,
and an app.
Twitter.
You have an
And
app.
an app.
And we
You
have an
an
app that you can download at Google Play or at iOS, Apple Store. Shout out to the AV and communications team who keep all of that going. And
It's
Paul,
no easy task.
it's no
It is
easy
not.
task.
No.
It's hard.
The number of folks paying attention, I'll just say, exponentially increased when I stopped doing it and passed it on to some more capable folks. So that's a platform.
Thank you, Harris and Judah. I know what that's like.
So you can definitely go there. PaulCHarris.com is more of a compilation of academic work as well as ministry work. And we've got a new partnership with the Charlottesville Alliance for Black Male Achievement and working on a small group called MP3 at Charlottesville High School, which is one of several projects that I'm excited about right now. And of those two websites, you can probably tap into something that we're doing. And not unlike anything that we ever do, it's teamed up with somebody. So
It's teamwork.
You'll also get to meet some other really cool folks in the process.
I love it. Teamwork to make the dream work.
Yes.
This show certainly embodied it today. We will archive the show in totality on ilovecville.com. There you can catch the video cast. We will also take the audio and feature that on iTunes, where you can take your phone, put your earbuds in, stream it to your car, your vehicle, and listen to a fantastic program. This was a fabulous show. We're totally 100% grateful for Paul Harris.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your weekend. Have some time with your family. Have a good time. Be safe. We will see you next Friday with Sarah and Mike Buczynski on Real Talk, powered by the Yes Team. Work.
Thank you.
Work.
Thanks, Yonna.
Oh.
Work. Work.